Let's start this video off with a thought experiment. Let's say you're the GM of an NBA team that is in the thick of a rebuilding stage, and you just drafted a prospect 3rd overall who could turn everything around. He's a 7-foot tall, elite defensive player who has the potential to be a dynamic scoring threat, but his offensive game is still a work in progress. He's a limited shooter with high athleticism, but a loose handle and can only really score efficiently when he's at the rim. How would you build around this player? Most of you would probably create a checklist that includes things like adding shooters to space the floor, finding elite playmakers who can create scoring opportunities so this player doesn't have to create everything for himself, as well as adding scorers who can lighten the load so he's not the only viable scoring option and the main focus of the opposing defense, and finally maximizing his reps or pushing him out of his comfort zone to necessitate consistent growth. This is all pretty textbook stuff when you're developing a franchise cornerstone, but if you look at how the Cavs have developed Evan Mobley since drafting him, they clearly have not done enough to check all 4 of those boxes. I think you can realistically argue they've checked 2 boxes while the other 2 have not been prioritized in the way you would expect. Yes, the Cavs have surrounded Mobley with elite playmakers who can spoon feed him easy scoring opportunities, and they have added a true superstar in Donovan Mitchell to erase the burden of Mobley needing to carry the team offensively at any point. But this just isn't the type of roster you'd build if you truly felt like Mobley's development was the most important thing in making the Cavs a contender. Even someone like myself, who has routinely defended the 2 big lineup, can admit that pairing Mobley with Jarrett Allen has not created an ideal environment for his growth offensively. Mobley should probably be playing more like a center than a power forward on offense, but the Cavs have put him in kind of a weird position. Now on the defensive end, Mobley's pairing with Allen has been dynamite. They've been a fantastic defensive duo, and while I do actually think there's room for them to grow together on offense, we can just call it what it is. Mobley's current path to being a more consistent scoring threat would be a whole lot easier if he wasn't sharing the floor with Allen. And that's because Mobley has not been pushed into doing some of the things that would make his pairing with Allen work offensively. So let me explain what I mean by that with another thought process. Let's say we are locked into the 2 big lineup because we love the way it boosts the defense and we want to find a way to make this work on offense. Then okay, how would we make it work? I don't think any of us would say, well, Allen and Mobley are going to just hang around the rim and catch dump-off passes or spam pick and rolls until Donovan Mitchell goes off for 30 points and carries us to victory. No, that's clearly not a winning formula, and it has become less and less effective as the last 2 years have unfolded. Teams understand now what the Cavs are looking to do offensively. It's part of the reason why Darius Garland has had a difficult time adjusting, because his in-between game has not been as lethal as it was in the past. Garland used to toy with help defenders and bait them into stepping up before tossing a dime to his bigs or finishing at the rim. But now opponents are aware of this ruse and aren't falling for it anymore. And since Garland hasn't established himself as a premier interior scoring threat, it's become too easy for defenders to sit on his floater and dare him to beat them with his scoring while taking away the dump-off pass. This has hurt Mobley just as much as it's hurting Garland, because now neither one of them are getting as many easy scoring opportunities as they were before, and this has trickled down to hurt the Cavs as a whole. So back to my question, how do you make the Mobley-Allen pairing work on offense? Well, that's the job Kenny Atkinson has been hired for. It's clear that you can't pick and roll your way out of this spacing issue, and you can't just rely entirely on the shot creating ability of Donovan Mitchell to bail you out. If the Cavs are going to run this 2 big lineup, then one of the 2 bigs has to stop playing like a traditional big. The intrigue of Evan Mobley and the thing that made him a special prospect coming out of college was the fact that he's 7 feet tall and can move his feet better than 99% of the guys his size. And so really, you are wasting Mobley's greatest strength if you ask him to play like a traditional big man. Mobley is not a post player or an old school pick and roll threat. In fact, he's never even placed higher than the 50th percentile as a pick and roll man. Now that is shocking when you consider how gifted Mobley is at the rim. He has shot nearly 80% from inside the paint for his career, but those opportunities aren't as great when he's rolling into a crowded paint. Oftentimes Mobley is catching the ball with 1 or 2 defenders in front of him, and this shouldn't be the case. Roughly 2/3 of Mobley's career field goal attempts have come within 10 feet of the rim, and while that's obviously catering to his strengths, it's not really a recipe for success when roughly 90% of Jarrett Allen's attempts are coming from the the same zone. A lot of times there's just nowhere for Mobley to go, and it ends up being a stagnant action that leads to the Cavs resetting the offense. And so one way you can remedy this problem is by having Evan Mobley expand his game a little bit. Rather than running deep into the paint, Mobley can stop at the free throw line and make a decision from there. Using him more of a Draymond Green or Bam Adebayo type who can pass or score from the short roll is something the Cavs should continue looking to do. This fixes the issue of Mobley and Allen stepping on each other's toes, and it would open the door for that big-to-big pass that works like a charm whenever the Cavs organize their offense. This has been a goal for the Cavs, and Mobley actually shot a career best 46% last season from this zone, but he can certainly still improve, and his processing speed as a passer has always been an underrated strength for Mobley that I really hope they tap into, because I think there's a realistic path toward Mobley being a guy who can average 4 or 5 assists a game, and that would be huge for unlocking this offense. Again, if this pairing is going to work, then someone has to play like a modern 4 rather than an old school 5. And while I think you can make a case for Allen taking on more responsibilities, operating dribble handoffs, and maybe even knocking down elbow jumpers, the onus here really falls on Evan Mobley to broaden his horizons because he's the star prospect. The Cavs need Mobley to feel more comfortable on offense, whether that's shooting 3-pointers or even just handling the ball. This isn't as simple as saying, well, Mobley needs to be a better 3-point shooter, because yes, that would obviously help quite a lot, but it's not the only way for him to expand the floor. Mobley's strength is his mobility. We have seen some of his best moments come from when he's facing up against slower opponents. And so the only way I see the two big lineups surviving long term is if Mobley develops into a player who can dominate from the elbow. Otherwise, you just have two centers occupying the same lanes. The reality is this team won't raise their ceiling if Mobley doesn't improve. We can blame Kobe Altman for not prioritizing his development by structuring the roster around Mobley's needs, but there's also a great deal of responsibility that falls on Mobley's shoulders. He is responsible for becoming the player that we all thought he could become. It's not like the Cavs are asking him not to shoot 3-pointers or take initiative within the offense. Because let's be clear, Mobley spends roughly half of his minutes at the 5 without Allen. And aside from a few playoff games against Boston, he really hasn't done enough in those minutes to suggest that Mobley is ready to explode if he's given the keys. Mobley has every opportunity to take 3-pointers or face up with the ball in his hands. His pairing with Allen isn't stopping that from happening, it's something he needs to do on his own. And the truth is, he hasn't done those things because he still has some growing to do. The good news is we have seen some development brewing under the surface. For example, Mobley shot a career best 37% from deep and 71% from the free throw line last season, and his scoring against Boston suggests that there is a baseline of raw elite talent waiting to be polished. But roster construction isn't something that stops a superstar from looking like a superstar. If Mobley is going to be an all-NBA talent, then the Cavs roster should only be a small obstacle for him to overcome. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Mobley should be a star with or without Allen next to him. The NBA hierarchy always sorts itself out one way or another. Overlapping talents didn't stop Kyrie from surpassing Dion Waiters or Donovan Mitchell from rising to all-NBA status next to Darius Garland. You can even look at Nikola Jokic bumping Jusuf Nurkic out of Denver altogether. These things work themselves out because great players will always find a way to be great. And so these roster decisions for the Cavs would be a whole lot easier if Mobley's flashes stopped looking like a strobe light and more like a constant beam. A huge part of bringing in Atkinson is an effort to establish Mobley as a legit star. Atkinson has a track record for helping bigs like Al Horford and Brook Lopez in the past extend their range as 3-point shooters, and his offensive philosophy is much more inclusive than JB's heliocentric style. So I think one way or another, we're going to find out if both Allen and Mobley can do enough offensively to gel in a free-flowing system that requires them to be more than traditional big men. Mobley especially will be challenged to fill the shoes he was expected to wear when the Cavs drafted him. And to wrap everything together, the Cavs haven't exactly placed Mobley's development at the top of their priorities like you would expect, but they haven't totally neglected him either. I think it's time the franchise stops babying Mobley, especially now that he's signed a max contract extension. It's time for him to expand his game or at least fail trying, but they can't continue to shelter him offensively. He should be attempting field goals at a career high rate next season, and I'll be disappointed if he isn't, because Mobley hasn't been given the usual blueprint of a top draft pick, but no one is telling him to stand back and wait his turn. If he's got the talent to be the guy, then now is the time to show it. The baton is very much up for grabs, and the Cavs aren't going to hit their ceiling until Mobley rises up to take it. Anyways, that's all for today's video. If you follow this channel, then you know I'm personally very high on Evan Mobley, and I still believe he has what it takes to be an all-NBA player, but I wanted to share my thoughts on this situation because I do think it's really fascinating. The Cavs could have done a better job building around him up to this point, but I also think it's fair to say that Mobley is responsible for some of this stuff as well. So please let me know in the comments what you think about all of this, and if you enjoyed the video, then go ahead and help me out by hitting subscribe or dropping a like. Those two things are very much appreciated, and with all that being said, go Cavs.